Okay, we are heading for the moment of truth here. What's up, guys? How's it going? Just over here at the hangar. Man, check this out. It's like 60 degrees outside. It's nothing but a light breeze today. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, for springtime, this is unreal to have the weather this nice. And here I am, waiting on stuff to show up still. Actually, I got the fuel fittings this morning. They came in, so I'll be able to hook up the fuel system. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it open, but I'm going to run the pumps, run some fuel through the system for two reasons. I want to clean everything out real good, just make darn sure the lines are clean. Don't want anything trying to go down an injector once the engine's running. And the second thing is I want to test that surge tank and make sure that I'm getting, good fuel flow through that system and that it's refueling. Shouldn't be any problems, but when I went to fill it, I had to bleed the air out of it. It wouldn't take fuel. I kind of half expected that would happen. I should have put another port in there so I had an option to run a vent, even though that's not exactly as good as it sounds either. I think once it's full of fuel, it won't be an issue. It's just displacing fuel from the wing tanks as you use it now, so it should be fine. Once you get that air out. But if you ever run it down into the header tank and you go to refill it, you got to have a way to bleed it again. That's the problem, and it shouldn't ever happen because if you run it down that low, it only holds 2 gallons, so that's getting a little too low. But you never know. Okay, here we go. Firing up main pump. Firing up secondary pump. Right now I'm just putting fuel into a container. But everything's looking good. I pinched down the line and made like 30 pounds of fuel pressure just to kind of test it, and don't see any leaks. So right now I'm just going to drain some fuel, not enough to actually drain the wing tanks down because I won't have to reprime it. I'm just going to get them down low. That's basically what I do, is just run like well over 2 gallons so that I know I've displaced the entire header tank with fuel, and if everything still looks good, then I'll go ahead and button it back up, and we'll try it for real. All right, just checking to make sure I got the right driver for this USB to serial adapter. Like I say, I think it's the same one I already have, so it should be installed. And we'll be able to connect up and make sure the ECU is happy. So I just finished making that last fuel line, and just kind of make a turn up and over all this stuff so it's not hitting anything, and I tested it. But anyway, point being, I've ran them quite a while. No leaks or anything. Everything looks good. It's holding about 40 pounds of pressure when you shut down the system because of the check valves. So that means it's, I guess, sealed up pretty well. Okay, we are heading for the moment of truth here. So I'm just going to crank it over, prime the oil system, make sure that's good. Fuel system should be up still. And, go ahead and let her rip, see if it'll fire up. Haven't touched the tune or anything. Just gonna see if it'll run as is, and we'll go from there, All right. 1500. Yeah, right at about 1500 it's starting to shake a little bit. Not quite as smooth. Still not bad, but at like 1550, 1600 and above, it's totally smooth. And it looks like it needs a little tweaking air-fuel ratio wise, so may or may not help that, but you know, it's not like it's fine-tuned. Just got the base map and it runs real smooth. The throttle response is like, I mean, it is right there. That is great. All right, so I'm just setting the idle. It was set a little too low. For now, I'm going to set it right at 1500 or like 1480, 1490 is about where I had it. Right around 1500 is where it's starting to run a little rough. And so if I can tune around that, maybe I'll drop it some more. But at this point, I don't want to run it any lower. You know, you're supposed to idle them at 2000 and all that. With the fuel injection and it's smoother, you can bring it down some. That's where it's starting to run a little rough, so obviously there's no point to go any lower than that. And that should allow a nice low RPM on approach. So anyway, so I set the throttle right there and locked it and then shut it down. And I'm just adjusting the stop in. It's a 7mm nut and bolt right there. So no big deal. All right, we're gonna do a cold start. I have not preheated. You can see the temperatures are all 68, 69 degrees. EGTs are 59, 60. So not a cold day. It didn't need to be preheated, but cold start, so to speak. So what I do, we'll go ahead and run a fuel pump. I'm gonna actually crank it till I see oil pressure and then flip on the ECU. Or excuse me, I'll flip on the ECU. But I'm going to leave the ignition off until I see oil pressure. It's just personal preference. It comes up really quick, not a big deal. But anyway, here we go. Clear prop. Okay, so we got 60 pounds of oil pressure. So I'll go ahead and flip these on and we'll see if it'll fire. So I had the throttle a little low and it still fired right up. All right, now we'll do a hot start. Okay, clear prop. All right, a little too high on the throttle on that one, but pops right to life. What's going on, guys? Fighting one little issue, and it's a strange one. It's even got the edge guys, you know, kind of scratching their heads a little bit. And what's going on is I'm having some issues with boost control. It is hunting around the boost. It's not stable, and so we all agreed it sounded like the servo was doing something funky. Because I showed him my boost tables and what I'd come up with for the duty cycle to run the servo, and you know, everything looked pretty normal to them. So I pulled the servo out. I didn't have my camera on me, but I'll put up a couple pictures here of what it looked like when I took it apart. Didn't find anything wrong. All the gears looked good. Everything looked fine. I smeared the grease back around, added a little extra, got everything kind of back where it goes, and then button that thing back up. I decided while it was off, I was going to go ahead and move it. It was terrible to get it off because it was up underneath behind the heater, up kind of high on the firewall, and the bolts were behind the oil tank, so couldn't actually hardly get those out, get the nuts off, and there was no way they were going to go back on. So I went ahead and moved it to a new location where it'll be a lot easier to work on. Yeah, it's a little bit uglier because you can kind of see it. It is mounted over here on the right now, so it's kind of more out in the open. It's not the most beautiful thing, but you guys have probably noticed a trend with me. I mean, I like things that look nice. Things got really nice paint and fabric, and that's awesome. I love that. But when it comes to stuff under the cowl or under the panel, you know, it's not I'm not here to win an award. I want something that's functional. I can work on it. Now I can get to this sucker and get it out easy, and also be able to monitor it when it's running. So maybe that'll help, you know, figure out what's going on. What I did in the meantime, because I had a thought, I thought, you know, I have two maps. I'll set the duty cycle, the initial start duty cycle, kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum, not all the way, but close. And then when I flip the maps, even with it not running, it's going to change. You know, it's going to rotate from one end to the other. Essentially, it's going to go from preloading that wastegate shut, holding it shut, to kicking it open, pretty open. And it's working as intended. You can see it there. It's you know, opens and closes, and it seems to be pretty repetitive as far as goes to the same spots every time, back and forth, you know. So I don't know, not sure what else I can do at the moment, but like when that right there, I just turned it to where it's trying to squeeze the wastegate shut to make boost. And I mean, it's nice and tight. That sucker is clamped down, you know, where it would be to spool it up. And then, of course, as it goes across the table, it gets into these lower duty cycle numbers, and it's going to open the wastegate and vent some exhaust around the turbo so it doesn't over boost. But anyway, seems to be functioning. So, I don't know what's going on. We're going to put it back together and try it. I had Thomas send me a new map. A new fresh map. I copied my fuel tables and injector trim tables and stuff over that I had worked out because I'd put a couple hours on it. Don't mind the tape all over the tail. I've got the tail taped up because, man, I'll tell you what, when you run this thing on the ground like that at higher power, it's awful, you know. It's pretty rough and everything's shaking and stuff. So I taped everything off, tied it off to make it as, you know, so it's not sitting there rattling in the hinges and stuff like that. But anyway, we're going to try a fresh map, see what's going on. I got to say, those guys have been super helpful. I've had really good support from them pretty much around the clock. Didn't matter what day of the week. I mean, somebody has been there to bounce ideas off of and try things. They had me trace all the wiring right from the servo back to the main plug on the ECU, and, you know, check some stuff like that just to make sure everything was right. And so we've done all that. So anyway, I appreciate those guys. They've been a huge help here, and I'm sure they'll see it through until we figure out what's going on. And then should be ready to rip. Shocks finally made it to Acme yesterday. Today is Monday. They actually got delivered on a Sunday. They don't deliver here on a Sunday, but I know they do in some places. But anyway, hopefully in a couple days, those guys will have them revalved, respringed, and whatever they're going to do and sent back out. And maybe I'll have those shocks by the weekend. And of course, if they send them through the post office, I'm sure I won't. I sent them priority, and it took like 13 days to get there. Anyway, maybe they'll be back by the weekend, and maybe this issue will be worked out by then, and everything will come together, and we'll put this sucker in the air. That's the hope. So we'll see. Best case scenario, that's what we're looking at. Anyway, we've had crap weather. We had a blizzard yesterday, and it was snowing and blowing again today some, and cold. Tomorrow, maybe after work in the afternoon, it might not be too bad. Maybe at least get this thing out there and do some test runs on the ground and you know, see what that boost's doing. So that's the plan. We'll see what happens. I've got I got the charge pipe off the plane here. This is the one that goes from the turbo to the intake manifold. I've got a mark on it here. I'm going to take a chunk of aluminum and drill it and tap it for an 1/8 inch pipe thread, and then weld it on here. Knock a hole in this and then weld it on here. And that is to put the I've got a temp probe to go back in there. You may have seen on the display on my panel, I've got that big MGL display and it has my EGTs. It also has one column that says CHT. It's not a CHT, but I can't change the name on it. It won't let me rename it. But that is a probe that I put in here so that I can see how hot that charge is coming out of the turbo, especially at high altitude. When you're trying to maintain boost at high altitude, that turbo's working pretty hard, starts making a lot of heat. So what I'm doing here is I'm gonna drill and tap here on the end going in for the probe. I'm tapering this out a little bit and making this wider. Gets that heat back away from those threads a little bit so you don't misshape everything quite as bad when you weld it. And I'm also going to kind of taper it down, and then I'm going to cut it off so that the wider part that's going to lay down to weld, that I can kind of carve underneath the shape for the pipe, that wider piece won't be super thick. Okay, I want it thick enough overall, there's plenty of threads, but I don't want the weld spot to be super thick because the pipe I'm welding it to is very thin, and especially with TIGging and aluminum, at least at my skill level, it's a lot easier to weld materials that are at least fairly close in thickness. So this little tool puts a start of a hole right in the center, so you can drill right in the center, which is not that critical. You know, you could do it by hand well enough for this application, but I'm going to actually drill a hole through this because with this cutting tool, it works a lot better when you have a hole on the inside that you're cutting into to cut that off. So as you can see, I'm working the piece off of here, and I've got my tapered down to a smaller ridge there, and then I'll have to do a little grinding underneath to shape that to the pipe to get a better fit up. So that's going to get a little bit thinner even yet. And I might actually just go ahead and drill and tap it right here in the lathe because I'm still hanging on to it. It's a little hard to do with one hand. I need to hold the chuck. See if I can set this down. I don't have my tripod for my camera today. Sorry, it's kind of in a hurry. Okay, there it is. Just cut it off. So I gotta just clean up the bottom side a little bit and then give it a little bit of a shape to fit on the pipe. And then weld it on, and it's threaded and should work pretty good. Sorry guys, I haven't been doing a very good job of filming this. It's like 20 degrees out here and I'm just trying to get it done. It's just freezing. But so I drilled a hole in the pipe, plenty big hole, and then made sure I work the burrs out of the inside. Just want to make sure that's good and clean. Nothing's going to chip off and go through the engine. Then I got this just sitting on here ready to tack. About where it goes. I didn't grind it to where I got a real good fit up. But, you know, I got enough to get started, and then I should be able to work from there and handle it. Okay, I had something kind of weird happen there when I was welding that. I'm not sure if it was some kind of contamination because I cleaned everything, wire brushed it, hit it with some acetone and the whole thing. But anyway, I had to grind on it a little bit. Then I came back and laid another bead around the edge to kind of finish it off, and that went pretty well. That bead laid down nice. You know, I did a couple practice beads, these ones right here on this edge, and everything was welding great. I was laying down some, you know, pretty nice beads there. But as usual, I run into trouble on the piece that matters. But anyway, it's welded good. It just kind of uglied it up a little bit, and I had to make this big wide weld. And all right, guys, so I fixed my weird boost problem. Man, I've just been racking my brain over this and trying to come up with anything. And I was looking over the map the other day, as I've done a bunch of lately, just going over in detail, checking all the different maps in there and the parameters and stuff for the tune. And I found a map that was set up to pull boost based on intake air temperature coming out of the turbo, which is a good map to have, but it was set way too low. So it was starting to pull boost at like 120 degrees. So what was happening is, because the boost was fluctuating, but it was doing it slowly. So what was happening is I'd go wide open, it would come up, and then it would get a little warm, and it would start pulling the boost back, and then it would cool off a little bit, so it would come back up and get warm, and so on. It's just going up and down. So that was the main issue. I mean, it's obviously making, you know, really good power without having to turn the boost up that high, and that's perfect. Keeps the heat down a little bit out of the turbo, and hopefully we're not beating the crap out of it too much, you know. Like I say, if I see a nice little increase, I will tune it to where that's all I get. I mean, I'm just not going for, I'm trying not to go crazy here. I really want to fly the thing, man. I've been working on it so much. I really want to go fly it, so I don't want to break it. So, just a quick note on that, what happened there with that temp correction deal. I think this system is one of the first ones that's been designed specifically for the 914 without an intercooler. It's a little bit of a unique application. Typically, they always have intercoolers on their setups, which is definitely better. So, I think that was just a little bit of an overlook on that map, and that was messing me up. And so, of course, I notified Thomas, and I'm sure he'll fix the base map so anybody else that gets the system won't have that issue. And he was, you know, of course, willing to get on my laptop and look at the tune all this is going on. But I didn't have a hotspot over there. I'm actually working on a solution for internet at the hangar because I just put in a pretty elaborate security system, and it has all kinds of motion sensors and alarms and stuff. And I'm getting ready to tie it into you know, an outside connection so it can notify me or, you know, authorities or whatever if something, you know, something's disturbed around the hangar. So that needs to happen anyway, and I've got something in the works pretty soon, actually. Yeah, I was getting ready to film this last little segment, and I'm looking at my hair going, man, I'm going to have to get a back alley illegal black market haircut here pretty soon. This is getting ridiculous. But anyway, one thing I was going to say, hey, I'm glad, you know, that Edge is around and doing what they're doing. I can't get too specific with this just yet, but, you know, talking about outlet temperatures on that turbo and taking the heat out of stuff and not a lot of room to work on a narrow cal S7, Thomas is already, you know, I voiced some of those concerns, and he's already putting together, designed something that may really help with, sorry, my dog's attacking the couch. It's a really cool deal that he's building, and it looks like I'm going to get in on the testing for the prototype, which is super cool. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm thankful that these guys are out there doing what they do. You know, they see an issue or how to improve something, and that's what they're doing. I mean, this fuel injection is just proof of that. It's so superior to the carburetors in so many ways. It's a really cool deal. And of course, not just the Rotax, but look at the Yamaha. Look at that Apex, you know, or in their case, you know, the Epex setup that Edge offers. That's absolutely unbelievable. If I wasn't trying to avoid more weight overall, and especially on the nose, I'd absolutely go down that path. I mean, that thing's a monster. If you don't know who Steve Henry is, do yourself a big favor and look up Steve Henry, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Unbelievable stuff. Just, man, it's cool. So it's cool to have them around building the cool stuff they're building. All right, guys, I'm gonna end that video here. I wanted to just make one big video that showed the first start and the first flight and some of these cool things going on, but I had a lot of content in here that I really did want to put in a video, and it's just gotten so long that I think if I had done one video, it would have been 45 minutes long, and I didn't have the heart to do that to you guys. Next video should be coming up pretty soon. Hopefully all that'll happen. Got some more fun content building stuff in that one. I appreciate you sticking around and watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Should be soon. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you when I see you.